Hey guys, what's up? My name's Tyler from Tyler Schwab Imagery in Findlay, Ohio, and this is my very first tutorial, my very first YouTube video. So I decided I wanted to start making some of these videos to help out some of the newer photographers and even some of the seasoned photographers that just need a little bit of help with editing. Um, so I'm going to show you in this first tutorial, I'm going to show you just some really basic editing techniques. So this is going to be the image that we're going to start with here. Now I shoot everything in RAW. Um, if you shoot in JPEG, you can probably do some of this stuff, but it's just, you're not going to have enough room to work with. So I definitely recommend you shoot in RAW. So I'll go ahead and open this here, and by default, it's going to open up in Camera Raw. So the first thing I'm going to do on this one here is I'm going to pull down the highlights a little bit. And when I do that, you'll notice if I pull them all the way down here, it just kind of brings down some of the brighter parts of the image. And so next thing that I'll do is I'll take the blacks. You'll notice that some of these darker areas are really dark. I want to kind of bring some of that back to get some more of that detail back. So I'm going to pull that up a little bit. And I don't want to pull it up too much. I'm basically doing this in steps. So the first thing in the dark area that I'll pull up is the blacks. So I'll do like a +30 on that. And then I'll come over here to the shadows. And I'll bring those up a little bit. And I can go maybe like +25, somewhere around there. And then I'm going to actually pull back the contrast. And what that's going to do is that's going to kind of pull down the whites and pull up the blacks at the same time. And that'll just give me a little bit better base image, a little bit more room to work with. And then I'm even going to pull up the exposure here just a little bit, and then maybe even pull down the highlights a little bit more. So let me pull this back down just a little bit here. All right, so there's kind of a good starting point. I'll show you the before and after. So there's before, a lot of contrast in that, and then there's the after. So just kind of, like I said, it evens everything out. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to take my clarity. I'm going to pull that back a little bit, and let me zoom in here. And they actually have really good skin, so I really don't need to do this, but I know a lot of times this will kind of help smooth out the skin a little bit. So I have it at 0 now, and when I pull it back, see what it does. I'll pull it back all the way. It just kind of just smooths everything out. You don't want to go overboard with this. Maybe, you know, let's say -12 here for this one. And like I said, it just kind of smooths it out a little bit. Down here in the vibrance and saturation, I generally don't do too much here. I'm going to add some color later, and I'm actually going to add color and contrast at the same time. I have a really cool trick to show you guys to do that. So let's go ahead and pull some of this saturation out, because again, I'm going to add some more later. And then I can even maybe boost the vibrance up a little bit to counter that. So saturation is going to be, let me zoom out real quick and show you. So if I boost the saturation up, see what happens? It kind of goes nuclear. We don't want that. So now if I do the same thing with the vibrance, it brings up the color quite a bit. It still kind of has that, like, you know, oversaturated look, but look at the skin tones. It's not really affecting the skin tones too much. So that's why I generally will pull down some of the saturation and then pull up the vibrance to kind of counteract that. Now, again, notice there's not a whole lot of color yet. We'll get to that. I just want to get a really good base image to where my shadows aren't, too dark, my blacks aren't too dark, my brights aren't too bright. Because I'm going to selectively add and subtract stuff in certain areas once we get into Photoshop. So next thing I'll do, I do want to tell you my temperature. Since I shoot with strobes quite a bit. I have a Flashpoint Explorer 600 that I generally will put in a softbox. In this image here, I had it set off to the right here, and I kind of feathered it out so it would light them, but it wasn't going to be too harsh. And notice my placement of the models too. So generally you want the female, you want them kind of looking into the light. It's a little bit more flattering. And then the male you can have looking away from the light. That's okay. So my color temperature is set at 5650, which is maybe a tad warm, but it's not going to make or break it or anything. But I set that in camera before I go out on my shoots. So my next panel that I'll go to is the detail panel. And what you'll notice here is I shoot with the Sigma 105. And a lot of times I'll shoot it wide open. I'll shoot right at 1.4. So being as wide open as it is, it may not be, even though it's a really super sharp lens, the sharpness may not be as good as it could be. So I will add some sharpening here. So I'll probably go, so I'll go up to maybe like 73. Let's try that. And then anytime you add sharpening, it's going to bring out, if there's any noise in the image, it's going to bring out some of that noise. Since I did shoot at ISO 320 and not ISO 100, there is going to be some noise in there. Even if I shot it at 100, there might be a little bit. But the higher the ISO, the more noise you're gonna get in there. So I'll go down here to my noise reduction tab and I'll pull up the luminance noise reduction, maybe to about 20. That should be good. And see how that kind of took a lot of that noise out. Now some people won't do that in this panel. Some people don't add the sharpening here. They would rather take the noise out first and then add the sharpening. For me, I don't ever see that being an issue. I think it looks good either way. So you could really do it however you want to do it. So I'm not going to do anything in the HSL just yet, but we'll come back to that. So right now I'm going to go into my lens corrections. And the one thing with my lens corrections, I'll just go and enable profile corrections, and then it'll actually find my lens here that I use, and then finds the profile, all that. Notice how it takes out the distortion if I go back and forth here, but it also takes out the vignette. So vignettes are okay if they're used properly, but you don't want to really have too much of a vignette. But I find that with this lens I actually like the subtle vignette that it has, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that down, and that gives it more, it's a little bit more natural. So now what I'll do is I'm going to go back over here into the HSL adjustments. And one thing that I want to note with HSL, anytime you're working with these sliders, basically what this is going to do is this is going to separate all your different colors, and you can kind of work on them separately. So let's say I want to, brighten or darken the yellows or greens or whatever, I can pull just that slider down or up, and that's going to adjust the luminance on that. And that goes for like greens, and you can kind of go through here and play with these and see what you want to get, or see what you can get with the different slider adjustments. But my main goal with this one is we were kind of going for more of a fall photo shoot, and you'll notice that the leaves haven't really completely changed. It was still a little bit too early, but this was really the only time that I could get to do this. So I'm going to kind of fake that fall look here. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to go into the hue adjustment layer. And I don't want to mess with the reds or the oranges, because one thing you'll notice is most of your skin tones lie in that region, in the reds and orange region. So if I adjust this, let me zoom in here a little bit. So if you look on her cheek here and his cheek here, they do have a little bit of red in there. So I don't want to adjust that and mess up anything with the skin tone. Same thing with the oranges. So if I go back and forth, you'll notice that that's going to really mess up the skin tones, and I want to keep those pretty much as natural as I can. So I'm going to zoom back out here. And the colors that I'm looking at are my yellows and my greens. So my yellows, orange is a little bit more of a fall color here. So I'm going to pull my yellows over into more of the orange here. And then I'll take my greens and I'll pull those a little bit more towards yellow. And my goal is basically to maybe not get rid of the green, but just kind of, mute it out and kind of move it a little bit closer to that orange and yellow range. So I think that's pretty good there. And one thing I did notice is, since she is wearing a yellow shirt, it's changing that too. So I may not want to do this in here. I could actually do all this in Photoshop, but I'm actually okay with this. I think maybe, changing the color of her shirt to even match is kind of nice. It's kind of a nice touch. It just kind of ties in with the scene. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that like that. And I'm not going to mess with the luminance or the saturation or anything, because I'm going to add saturation later. I think that's pretty much all I'm going to do in this panel, other than I may go back here and I think I'm going to pop the whites a little bit. So so I'm keeping an eye here on my histogram. This little red dot here means that I'm clipping in my whites, so that means your highlights are blown out. So one thing I could do is I could hold my Alt or my Option button, and I can actually see where that white part is? That's where it's actually clipping. So I'm going to pull back until, say, maybe about right there, right before it starts clipping. And then that'll give me my white point. And then my black point, I'm not going to set right now. I could go into my blacks, do the same thing, and pull those down. And then before it starts clipping, so maybe like right around there at plus 15. And that would probably be okay, but I want a little bit more room to work with, because when I do this little color trick that I want to show you, it's going to add more darkness in the shadows. It's going to actually add more darkness to the whole image. So I want to have that extra room there to play with. So I'm going to go ahead and open this in Photoshop now. And the first thing that I'm probably going to do is I'm going to go in here. I'm just adding another layer. So if I click here, that's going to add another layer. I'm going to grab my healing brush here. And there's two different ones you can use. This one here, this one will allow, it'll just automatically, I'm gonna make sure I have sample all layers on. It'll automatically sample from different layers. So if I go here, it's gonna sample from different areas. But sometimes that doesn't do the greatest job, so you can go in here and then you can actually tell Photoshop where you want it to sample from. So like let's say I want it to sample from this area here. I just hold my Alt or Option button down and click, and then that's where it'll sample from. And then if you run into an issue where you don't think it's just not doing anything, that's going to be because your sample is on current layer. You want to make it either current or below or all layers. Current or below, current and below generally works fine for me. And then I can go back down here, and then I can just start taking stuff out. And then I want to sample from areas that are pretty much alike, that are close by. And the reason for that is because if I were to sample, like let's say from here and then paint up here somewhere, the depth of field is different. So see how this is blurry down here? It's going to make it blurry up there too. So I'm going to do Command Z, Controller Command Z, and that'll allow me to go back. And then I'm going to just start sampling nearby areas and just start taking out some of, just the small stuff here and there. And there's other tools you can use. You can use the clone stamp tool or the patch tool, however you want to do it. But this works fine for me. And I'm probably not going to go through and edit everything out like I normally would, but I just wanted to kind of show you guys that you can do that. Okay. So, one thing to note too is I'll try and, like if there's texture in a certain area, like right here, I'm going to try and line up that line or the texture or whatever, so that way it kind of blends in a little bit better. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Layer, Flatten Image, and so we were talking about, I was trying to tell you guys about the adding color, which will also add contrast. So if I went into, let's say, hue saturation, okay, if I go in here and I try and add saturation to my image here, or add color, whatever, this is what it's going to do. That does not look good. Looks like a nuclear bomb went off, and that's definitely not a good look. So instead of using that method, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to go to Selective Color, and then I actually have a preset. It's a Color Pop preset. So notice when I hit that preset there for the Color Pop, I'm at 100% opacity, and it's added all that color, but it's not overbearing. It's natural color, but you'll also notice that it does darken down some of the areas. So if you look like down through here, it's going to darken some of that down. And then also up in here, like in his chest area. So I'm going to grab my brush, and I'm going to change my flow to about, let's say maybe 10%. And I'm going to just kind of, I'm going to hit X and I'm going to paint with black. I'm just going to kind of pull it out of some of the darker areas a little bit. I'm not going to pull it completely out, but I do want to pull it out a little bit. So maybe in the hair here, since it's kind of dark there. I want to try and keep as much detail in here as I can, but I still want to be able to add color and all that good stuff. So that just kind of adds a little bit of a base color there. So here's your before and after. And then I'm actually going to go into selective color again, and we're gonna work on these trees a little bit again. So instead of using a preset, I'm going to actually use this a little bit differently than to just add color. I'm going to use it to actually change the color. So again, so remember we determined that this was yellow and orange, or yellow and green were the colors back here. So I'm going to work on my yellows in the selective color. And you have CMY, and then the opposite of that is RGB. So your cyan, magenta, and yellow. The opposite is going to be red, green, and blue. So if I pull cyan out, see how it changes it to add red? So that's kind of what I'm going for. So I'm adding red just to my yellows. So it's not really affecting really all that, anything other than whatever's yellow. And then same thing with magenta, I can kind of go back and forth and see if I want to add or subtract that. So maybe add like +3. I might not go so much on that either, on the red. And then I'll go here and just add a little bit more yellow. And I think that looks okay. So now we'll go to our greens. And there's really not a whole lot of greens in here, so I don't really need to mess with that too much. But what I want to do is, this is nice, but it does look like there is a little bit of yellow in their skin. So I'm going to take my mask, set to white, and then I'm going to take my flow of my brush to 100%, and then I'm going to paint with black. You can hit X to toggle back and forth between your black and white brush. And I'm just going to paint it off of their skin. Because again, I want their skin to be as natural as I can. I mean, I'll add color, but I don't want to change the color. Same thing with her shirt here. I did change it in camera raw, but I kind of want to keep it that color that it was in camera raw. So I'm going to mask this color out, and then maybe even just go over the shirt as well. So you basically just mask it off of your subjects. If you're not really sure, just pull it off of, just mask your whole subject out of it. Okay, so there's your before and after on that. And let me toggle this back and forth again. So I don't think I want that down here in the dirt either, so I may just go through here and just kind of mask that out. And maybe I'll just set my flow to like 30%, and then I'll switch back to white, and then I'll just add just a little bit in there. Actually, maybe even, let's do 14%, somewhere around there. So just so it kind of ties in. So I don't want it to really like be overbearing, but I want it to tie in here. So after that, we can go into our curves adjustment layer, and let's see what we want to do here. So do we want to darken down the background, or darken down our subject, or lighten them? So I think what I'll do is I'm just going to bring it up a little bit like this here. And then I'm going to hit Control or Command I to invert that. And I'm going to put my opacity back up and then bring my flow all the way down to, like, let's say 2%. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to basically just paint with light. So we call this dodging and burning, basically. So what I want to do is I'm going to go to, like, the brighter areas, and I'm just going to add a little bit more brightness into those areas. And the reason why I use such a low flow is because I have more control that way. So if I use a higher flow, then I wouldn't have very much control, and it would be really hard to get the results that I want. So I'm just going to kind of brighten up certain areas that are already bright, and generally what it's going to be is it's going to be the forehead, the bridge of the nose, here and there in the cheeks a little bit, on the chin, and then maybe even just a little bit under the neck here. And then, let's see, go over here. Nose there. So just anywhere that there's bright parts, you're just going to kind of emphasize that. But I also use it to kind of even stuff out too. So, like, let's say I wanted to even out the skin here. I'm going to take these dark parts and I'm going to try and get them as close to the lighter parts as I can. And it basically just kind of smooths out. It's another way to smooth out the skin. So you can use dodging and burning for quite a few different applications. Like, you can add depth, you can retouch with it, you know, all kinds of stuff. So there was kind of like a harsh line here, so I just kind of went over that like once or twice. Just go over that a couple times, just to break up that line and get a little bit smoother transition. And you have to be really careful with dodging and burning, because you can literally reshape somebody's face, or any parts of the image, with dodging and burning. Because what happens is the lighter the lighter parts are more raised areas. I'm going to even this out here. So wherever you have lighter parts of the image, that's generally going to be more raised, and then the darker parts of your images are going to be sunken in. So, like, let's say right here on his cheek, so you can tell, since this goes into a darker area, that this part of his cheek is a little bit more sunken in, and then it comes back out over here. So you don't want to necessarily change the shape of somebody's face, because then it just doesn't even look like them. But you can even some stuff out. So maybe even like right here, I'll just kind of paint a little bit in here just to kind of even this out here. And this isn't because they have bad skin, it's just the way that the light hits, and we all just can't be perfect when it comes to lighting. So I think that's good for the dodging on the face, at least. So I'm going to actually use it again here, like in the close, to add a little bit of depth there too. So I'm brightening up areas that are already bright, and then I'll go back through with the burn after this and darken down certain parts of the image. Okay, you can go as far as to do all these little creases and stuff like that, or you could just do like an overall just an overall brightening of certain areas. Completely up to you. But this, I'll show you the before and after once I'm done here, and you'll kind of see how it basically just adds a little bit of dimension. So again, like there's just this seam down here. I'm going to brighten that a little bit. And some of these creases, and then over here I'll just kind of go down the front of her leg. Just add a little bit of brightness there, maybe even the top of the shoe. Same over here. And down her arm. And I mean, you can even go as far as to go onto like the hand and the fingers. However far you want to take it is perfectly fine. It just all depends on how much time you have to work on your images. Obviously, you're not going to do this for every single one, but if you want something to really stand out, like if this is going in your portfolio, then you definitely want to take your time. And I think that's pretty much good. So just with the dodging part, this is what we got. So there's your before, there's your after. So it just adds a little bit extra. So now we'll go back in, add another curves adjustment layer, and then instead of brightening it up, we're going to bring it down. And we're not going to bring it down a ton, but we'll bring it down to maybe about right there. Hit Control or Command I. Now you can also change the blend mode. You can go down here and change it to luminosity. If you do that, here we'll just do that. So let me hit Command I. So see, if I change it to luminosity, it's not going to mess with any of the colors. It's just going to darken the image down a little bit. If I change it to normal, it's going to add a little bit of saturation. So there's normal, there's luminosity. So we'll just set it to luminosity, hit Command I, and we can do the same for the dodge layer too. And then again, I'm going to paint, make sure your mask is selected. I'm at about a 2% flow. Make sure your white brush is selected here. And then now we're going to start burning down some of these areas. So I'm going to start back here where we're kind of doing a little bit of the adjustments on the face. So remember, we brightened up, certain parts of the face here. So now I want to darken down and smooth out a couple of these areas here, just to kind of shape this part of the cheekbone here. And you can go back and forth between your dodge and your burn. Now normally I'd do this on a separate dodge and burn layer, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to do it all on one set. And then if you feel like you did too much, you can always hit X and toggle to black, and then you can basically mask out those areas there. So I think that's pretty good. But what I want to do here is I want to see how there's kind of like a harsh line here. I want to kind of even that out. So I'm just dodging now. I've switched layers to my dodge layer, and I'm just kind of evening out where that transition is. And then I'll switch back to my burn. And just get that little area there. And then that should be good for that. And maybe add a little bit of brightness in here. Again, I don't want to do too much, and I may actually even pull down the opacity on these layers once I'm done. But I do want it to kind of pop a little bit, at least. So I'm just going in, and just certain areas I just want to kind of brighten up just a little bit. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. I mean, I could do more, but I want to kind of get this moving. So total before and after, I'll just keep it zoomed in here so you can kind of see what I've changed here. And I didn't really change the structure of her face. So that's, again, I can't emphasize that enough. You don't want to change the structure of their face. You just want to kind of, improve the lighting a little bit. And I know I could do more. I could probably bring some more brightness in here, but let's go ahead and move on here. And I can actually maybe brighten up under his eyes a little bit. Just kind of even that out. Now, one thing you will notice is if you go too much, when you're brightening, there's not as much color in the darker areas as there is in the lighter areas. So what that means is anytime you're trying to brighten a dark area, you're going to have a low saturation area. You're going to have a low saturation in that area. And then same goes for when you're darkening. So like, let me just create another curve here just to kind of show you what I mean. So if I paint, let's go 10%. If I paint with white, see how the saturation is it's kind of losing saturation. Now, if I go to darken it, it's actually it kind of increases it. So you want to be kind of careful of that too. All right, so let's see. I'll delete that. And I think that's pretty good where it's at. Bring my flow back down here. And I'm just kind of going under his chin here. And then now I can kind of zoom back out and look at some of the darker parts here. Now, since I generally shoot with strobes, I don't have to do a ton of burning, especially since I kind of underexpose quite a bit, but I still do some burning here and there. And it just basically, it just kind of makes it pop. And I don't want to darken this area down too much because I'll lose a lot of that detail. So I can just maybe do like a one pass. And then now I do, since I brighten this area here, I do want to darken down the edge here and the edge here to add a little bit more dimension. And then that actually goes all the way up and through this arm here. And then we have another kind of dark spot here, and maybe even some of these little creases here. And maybe underneath the hand. And then on the arm here. And just kind of pay attention to the light direction. Since my light's coming from this side over here, my shadows are going to be all on this side. So just kind of keep that in mind. And I think that's pretty good. I think that's good there. So now I'm actually going to add another selective color and do another color pop. And this time I'm going to pull it down a little bit. Maybe about 80%, somewhere around there. And then I'm going to use a black brush at about, let's say, 40% opacity. And I'm going to mask it out of their face. And then I also want to, let's go with maybe 20% opacity, somewhere around there. And I also want to pull that out of like the darker areas, because again, it's going to add a little bit of, it's going to darken it down a little bit. So I want to pull that out. Okay. So do that. Okay, I think that's pretty much all I would do. I mean, this is all I would do in a basic edit. There are other things that I would do for this, but that's going to be for another tutorial. If there's anything else that you guys would like to see, definitely let me know down in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, all that good stuff. What are you having trouble with? What do you having issues with? If I know how to do it, I'll definitely try and help out. I love teaching. That's kind of one of the things that got me into doing this stuff. But let's see. So last thing I want to do, what I did notice is down here I added a little bit of that red again with that color pop. So I'm going to change my brush to 40% opacity, and I'm just going to pull that out a little bit here. And then now I can go in and let's go to my crop tool. And when I crop, I generally crop 5:7. For this one, I want them pretty much in the middle of the frame. I think that's actually it's not a bad crop as it is, but maybe I'll get rid of some of this ground here. And maybe right about there. And the reason why I crop 5:7 is because, I'm gonna go ahead and hit that crop there, is because if they want an 8:10, I can always go in, and after I do the 5:7 crop, I can do an 8:10 crop. It just makes it a lot easier because I'm not going to lose that much more. Now, if I were to, or they can do it, if I were to do 8:10 first, then they would have to crop it again down to get 5:7. So you would crop about this much off on there, and you would literally just lose most of the image. So that's why I do 5:7. Yeah, I do 5:7 instead of 8:10 or whatever. And 5:7 is generally my most requested size anyways. I still want I want a lot of this in there still, so maybe that. And then a lot of people would probably crop these trees on the side, but I don't know. I kind of like having them having them there. I don't think they're too distracting, especially since I have one on each side, and then it just kind of draws you through the image and just kind of frames them a little bit. So I'll go ahead and hit enter there, and I think that's pretty much going to be that. And then the last step, maybe go on to levels. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold my Alt or Option, and then kind of like what we did in Camera Raw, I'm going to pull this up to see if it needs, I need to pull the blacks down anymore. I think maybe right there is fine. And then the whites, yeah, I think we're good. And then if you want, you can even add another curve and then just pull it up a little bit here like that. Controller Command I, and then get a really big brush at 100% opacity. And I will tell you on my brushes, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, my hardness is almost exclusively at 0%. So I'm always using a super soft brush. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a really big brush here. I'm going to just click once right in the middle. Make sure it's set to white. Click once right there in the middle. And then that'll kind of just add like a focusing point there. And if it's too much, here's your before and after on that. If you think that's too much, you can always just pull the opacity down. So I like it maybe right around 70. That's good. And then your next step is just to pretty much just export it and you're done. Alright guys, that's it. That's it for this tutorial. I know it was kind of long, but let me know what you guys think. Like I said, this is my very first one, so let me know how I did for one, and for two, if you liked it and you want to see some other tutorials, let me know in the comments what you want to see next. What do you need help with? What do you want to work on? Alright, thanks for watching.